So, first of all, I would like to wish you all a very happy Krishnastami 2023 as we are reading the Buddha's teaching. And chapter 26 deals about modes of birth and death. As stated here, again, the slow wits seek rebirth. Again comes birth and dying comes. Again men bear it to the grave, as stated by Samyutta Nikaya. The Pattika Samutpada describes the process of rebirth in subtle technical terms and assigns death to one of the following four causes. Number 1, exhaustion of the reproductive karmic energy, kama, khaya. The Buddhist belief is that, as a rule, the thought, volition, or desire, which is extremely strong during lifetime, becomes predominant at the time of death and conditions the subsequent birth. In this last thought process is present a special potentiality. When the potential energy of this reproductive janaka kama is exhausted, the organic activities of the material form in which is embodied the life force cease even before the end of the lifespan in that particular place. This often happens in the case of beings who are born in states of misery, apya, but it can happen in other planes too. Number two, the expiration of the lifetime, ayukaya, which varies in different planes. Natural deaths due to old age may be classed under this category. There are different planes of existence with varying age limits, respective of the karmic force that has yet to run. One must, however, succumb to death when the maximum age limit is reached. If the reproductive karmic force is extremely powerful, the karmic energy rematerializes itself in the same plane, or as in the case of Devas, in some higher realm. Number 1, the simultaneous exhaustion of the reproductive karmic energy and the expiration of the lifetime. Babhyakaya. Number 2, opposing action of a stronger karma, unexpectedly obstructing the flow of the reproductive karma before the lifetime expires. Upacheda Kama, sudden untimely deaths of persons, and the deaths of children are due to this cause. A more powerful opposing force can check the path of a flying arrow and bring it down to the ground. So, a very powerful karmic force of the past is capable of nullifying the potential energy of the last thought process and may thus destroy the psychic life of the being. The death of Venerable Devadatta, for instance, was due to a destructive karma which he committed during his lifetime. The first three are collectively called timely deaths, Kal Marana, and the fourth is known as untimely death, Akal Marana. An oil lamp, for instance, may get extinguished owing to any of the following four causes, namely the exhaustion of the wick, the exhaustion of oil, simultaneous exhaustion of both wick and oil, or some extraneous cause like a gust of wind. So may death be due to any of the foregoing four causes. Explaining thus the causes of death, Buddhism states that there are four modes of birth, namely, number 1, egg born beings, Andaja. Number 2, worm born beings, Jalayuja. Number 3, moisture born beings, Samsedaja, Svedaja. And beings having spontaneous birth, Upapattika. This broad classification embraces all living beings. Birds and oviparous snakes belong to the first division. The worm-born creatures comprise all human beings, some devas inhabiting the earth, and some animals that take conception in a mother's womb. Embryos using moisture as needles for their growth, like certain lowly forms of animal life, belong to the third class. Beings having a spontaneous birth are generally invisible to the physical eye. Conditioned by their past karma, they appear spontaneously without passing through an embryonic stage. Petas and Devas normally and Brahmas belong to this class. In this manner, the causes of death and birth is concluded in this chapter, which tells about the biodiversity and different life form that exist in planet Earth. Then chapter 27, plane of existence. Not to be reached by going is world's end, Anguttara Nikaya. According to Buddhism, the earth, an almost insignificant speck in the universe, is not the only habitable world, and humans are not the only living beings. Indefinite are world systems, and so are living beings. Nor is the impregnated ovum the only route to rebirth. By traversing, one cannot reach the end of the world, says the Buddha. This is about planes of existence. Births may take place in different spheres of existence. There are altogether 31 places in which beings manifest themselves according to their moral or immoral karma. There are four states of unhappiness, appava, appya, which are viewed both as mental states and as places. They are number one, Nirya, Ni plus Ayya, and devoid of happiness. Woeful states where beings atone for their evil karma. They are not eternal hells where beings are subject to endless sufferings. Upon the exertion of the evil karma, there is a possibility for beings born in such states to be reborn in blissful states as the result of their past good actions. Number two, Tirakshanna Yoni. Tiro, matlab cross, Akshanna going. The animal kingdom. Buddhist belief is that beings are born as animals on account of evil karma. There is, however, the possibility for animals to be born as human beings as a result of the good karma accumulated in the past. So, see Kindred Sayings, Part 1, page 85-86, Appaya devoid of happiness. Strictly speaking, it should be more correct to state that karma, which manifested itself in the form of a human being, may manifest itself in the form of an animal or vice versa. Just as an electric current can be manifested in the forms of light, heat, and motion successively, one not necessarily being evolved from the other. It may be remarked that at times certain animals, particularly dogs and cats, live a more comfortable life than even some human beings due to their past good karma. It is one's karma that determines the nature or one's material form, which varies according to the skillfulness or unskillfulness of one's action. Number three, Pitta Yoni, Pa Itta, literally, departed beings or those absolutely devoid of happiness. They are not disembodied spirits of ghost. They possess deformed physical forms of varying magnitude, generally invisible to the naked eye. They have no planes of their own, but live in forest, dirty surroundings, etc. There is a special book called Pettavattu which exclusively deals with the stories of these unfortunate beings. Samyutta Nikaya also relates some interesting accounts of these Petas, describing the pathetic state of a Peta. The Venerable Moggallana says, just now, as I was descending Vulture's peak hill, I saw a skeleton going through the air, and vultures, crows, and falcons kept flying after it, pecking at its ribs, pulling apart while it uttered cries of pain. To me, friend, come this thou. Oh, but this is wonderful. Oh, but this is marvelous that a person will come to have such a shape, and that the individuality acquired will come to have such a shape. This being, the Buddha remarked, was a cattle butcher in his previous birth, and as the result of his past karma, he was born in such a state. According to the questions of Melinda, there are four kinds of petas, namely the Ventashikas who fed on vomit, the Koppe Pasino who hunger and thirst, the Nijjamatanniga who are consumed by thirst, and the Paradhatupajivino who lives on the gifts of others. As stated in the Tirokuda Sutta, these last mentioned Vedas share the merit performed by their living relatives in their names and could thereby pass on to better states of happiness. Asura Yoni, the place of the Asura demons. Asura literally means those who do not shine or those who do not sport. They are also another class of unhappy beings similar to the Vedas. They should be distinguished from the Asuras who are opposed to the Devas. And next to these four unhappy states, and Dugati are the seven happy states. Sugati, they are number one, Manusya, the realm of human beings. The human realm is a mixture of both pain and happiness. Bodhisatta prefer the human realm as it is the best field to serve the world and perfect the requisites of Buddhahood. Buddhas are always born as human beings. And number two, Kattu Maharajika, the lowest of the heavenly realms, were the guardian deities of the four quarters of the firmaments reside with their followers. See Kindred Sayings Part 2, page 170. Khuddaka Pattam, literally those who have an uplifted or developed mind. Mano Sannam Edasam. The Sanskrit equivalent of Manusha is Manushya, which means the sons of Manu. They are so called because they become civilized after Manu, the seer. So the second classification of happiness was Katta Maharajika, the lowest of the heavenly realms where the guardian deities of the four quarters of the firmaments resides with their followers. Number 3, Tavattimsa, literally 33, the celestial realm of the 33 Devas, where Deva Shakka is the king. The origin of the name is attributed to a story which states that 33 selfless volunteers led by Magga, another name for Shakka, having performed charitable deeds, were born in this heavenly realm. It was in this heaven that the Buddha taught the Abhidhamma to the Devas for 3 months. Number 4, Yama, the realm of the Yama Devas, that which destroys pain is Yama. Number 5, Tushita, literally happy dwellers, is the realm of delight. The Bodhisattvas who have perfected the requisites of Buddhahood reside in this plane until the opportune moments comes from them to appear in the human realm to attain Buddhahood. The Bodhisattva Maitreya, the future Buddha, is at present residing in this realm, awaiting the right opportunity to be born as a human being and become a Buddha. The Bodhisattva's mother after death was born in this realm as a Deva god. From here, he repaired to Tavatimsa heaven to listen to the Abhidhamma taught by the Buddha. Number 5. Nimannarati, the realm of the Devas who delight in the created mansions. Number 6. Paranimittavasavatti, the realm of the Devas who make others' creations serve their own needs. The last 6 are the realm of the Devas, whose physical forms are more subtle and refined than those of human beings and are imperceptible to the naked eye. These celestial beings too are subject to death as all mortals are. A Chinese Buddhist book states that on each of the 4 sides of this plane are 8 heavens, 32, and a central one where King Shaka dwells, guide to Buddhahood. In some respects, such as their constitution, habitat, and food, they excel humans, but do not, as a rule, transcend them in wisdom. They have spontaneous birth, appearing like youth and maidens of 15 or 16 years of age. These 6 celestial planes are temporary, blissful abodes where beings are supposed to live, enjoying fleeting pleasures of sense. The 4 unhappy states, Dugati, and the 7 happy states, Sugati, are collectively termed Kamaloka, sentient sphere. Superior to these sensual planes are the Brahma realm or Rupaloka, realms of form, where beings delight in jnanic bliss achieved by renouncing sense desires. Rupaloka consists of 16 realms according to the jnanas or ecstasies cultivated. They are as follows: A. The plane of the first jnana. Number 1. Brahma Parisajja, the realm of the Brahma's retinue. Number 2. Brahma Purohita, the realm of the Brahma's ministers. Number 3. Mahabrahma, the realm of the great Brahmas. The highest of the first 3 is Mahabrahma. It is so called because the dwellers in this realm excel others in happiness, beauty, and age limit owing to the intrinsic merit of their mental development. Then B. The plane of the second jnana. 4. Paritabha, the realm of minor luster. 5. Apamanabha, the realm of infinite luster. Number 6. Abhasara, the realm of the radiant Brahmas. C. The plane of the third jnana. 7. Paritashubha, the realm of the Brahmas of minor aura. 8. Appamanna Shubha, the realm of the Brahmas of infinite aura. Number 9. Subhakinha, the realm of the Brahmas of steady aura. And D. The plane of the fourth jnana. 10. Vehapahala, the realm of the Brahmas of great reward. 11. Asanna Satta, the realm of mindless beings. 12. Suddhavasa, the pure abodes which are further subdivided into 5 Vijjavis like Ahiva, Aviha, the durable realm. 2. Atappa, the serene realm. Number 3. Sudasa, the beautiful realm. Number 4. Sudasi, the clear sighted realm. And number 5. Akanitha, the highest realm. Only those who have cultivated the jnanas or ekastasis are born on these higher planes. Those who have developed the first jnana are born in the first plane. Those who have developed the second and third jnana are born in the second plane. Those who have developed the fourth and fifth jnanas are born in the third and fourth planes respectively. The first grade of each plane is assigned to those who have developed the jnanas to an ordinary degree. The second to those who have developed the jnanas to a greater extent, and the third to those who have gained a complete mastery over the jnanas. In the 11th plane, called the Asanna Satta, beings are born without consciousness. Here, only a material flux exists. Mind is temporarily suspended while the force of the jnana lasts. Normally, both mind and matter are inseparable. By the power of meditation, it is possible, at times, to separate matter from mind, as in this particular case. When an arhat attains the Nirodha Samapatti to his consciousness ceases to exist temporarily. Such a state is almost inconceivable to us, but there may be inconceivable things which are actual facts. The Sudhavasas or pure abodes are the exclusive planes of anagamis or never returners. Ordinary beings are not born in these states. Those who attain Annagami in other planes are reborn in these pure abodes. Later they attain arhatship and live in those planes until their lifetime ends. There are four other planes called Arupaloka, which are totally devoid of matter of bodies. Buddhists maintain that there are realms where mind alone exists without matter. Just as it is possible for an iron bar to be suspended in the air because it has been flung there, and it remains as long as it retains any unexpended momentum. Even so, the formless being appears through being flung into that state by powerful mind force. There it remains till that momentum is expended. This is a temporary separation of mind and matter which normally coexist. It should be mentioned that there is no sex distinction in the Rupa Loka and the Arupa Loka. The Arupa Loka is divided into four planes according to the four Arupa Jnanas. They are number one, Akashanchayatana, the sphere of the conception of infinite space. Number two, Vinananakayatna, the sphere of the conception of infinite consciousness. Number three, Akinchanayatna, the sphere of the conception of nothingness. Kashyapa Thera wrote it. Number four, Nevasannasannayatna, the sphere of neither perception nor perception. It should be remarked that the Buddha did not attempt to expound any cosmological theory. The essence of the Buddha's teaching is not affected by the existence or non existence of these planes. No one is bound to believe anything it does not appeal to his reason, and nor is it proper to reject anything because it cannot be conceived by one's limited knowledge. In this manner, this chapter concludes. The next chapter will deal about how rebirth takes place. For detail and lifetime of various planes, see a manual of Abhidhamma by Narada Thera, page 234 to 46. So let us discuss about chapter 28. It will deal about how rebirth takes place. The pile of bones of all the bodies of one man who has alone one aeon lived would make a mountain's height, so said the mighty seer. Ittevuttaka. To the dying man at this critical stage, according to Abhidhamma philosophy, is presented a karma nimitta or gati nimitta. By karma is here meant some good or bad act done during his lifetime or immediately before his dying moment. It is a good or bad thought, If the dying person had committed one of the five heinous crimes, Garuka Kama, such as parricide, etc., developed the jnanas, ecstasis, he would experience such a karma before his death. These are so powerful that they totally eclipse all other action and appear very vividly before the mind's eye. If he had done no such weighty action, he may take for his object of the dying thought process a karma does immediately before death, sanna karma, which may be called a death proximate karma. In the absence of a death proximate karma, a habitual good or bad act, a chinna karma is presented, such as the healing of the sick in the case of a good physician, or the teaching of the Dhamma in the case of a pious bhikshus, or stealing in the case of a thief. Falling at all this, some casual tribal good or bad act, kattata kamma becomes the object of the dying thought process. Then karma nimitta, a symbol, means mental reproduction of any sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or idea which was predominant at the time of some important activity, good or bad, such as a vision of knives or dying animal in the case of a butcher, of a patient in the case of a physician, and of the object of worship in the case of a devotee, etc. etc. By Gati Nimitta, or symbol of destiny, it means some symbol of the place of future birth. The symbol of destiny is meant some symbol of the place of future birth. This frequently presents itself to dying persons and stamps its gladness or glooms upon their features. When these indications of the future birth occur, if they are bad, they can at times be remedied. This is done by influencing the thoughts of the dying man. Such premonitory visions of destiny may be fire, forest, mountainous regions, a mother's womb, celestial mansions, and the like. Talking for the object of karma, like talking for the object, a karma or karma symbol or a symbol of destiny. A thought process runs its course even if the death be an instantaneous one. If the death be an instantaneous one. For the sake of convenience, let us imagine that the dying person is to be reborn in the human kingdom and that the object is some good karma. His bhavanga, consciousness, is interrupted, vibrates for a thought moment, and passes away, after which the mind or consciousness, manodavara vajjana, arises and passes away. Then comes the psychologically important stage, Javana process, which here runs only for five thought moments by reason of its weakness, instead of the normal seven. It lacks all reproductive power, its main function being the mere regulations of the new existence, Abhinavakarana, the object here being desirable. The consciousness he experience is a moral one. The Tadalambana consciousness, which has for its function a registering or identifying for two moments of the object, so perceived, may or may not follow. For details with regard to these premonitory visions of the places of rebirth, see Dr. W. T. Evans Wentz, The Tibetan Book of the Dead, page 183. After this occurs the death consciousness, Kuttichitta, the last thought moment to be experienced in this present life. There is a misconception among some that the subsequent birth is conditioned by this last death consciousness, Kuttichitta, which in itself has no special function to perform. What actually conditions rebirth is that which is experienced during the Javana process. With the cessation of the deceased consciousness, death actually occurs. Then no material qualities born of mind and food, chitta and aharaja, are produced. Only a series of material qualities born of heat, uttayuja, goes on till the corpus is reduced to dust. Simultaneously, with the arising of the rebirth consciousness, there spring up the body decayed, sex decayed, and base decayed. Kaya bhava vattu dasaka. According to Buddhism, therefore, sex is determined at the moment of conception and is conditioned by karma, not by any fortuitous combination of sperm and ovum cells. The passing away of the consciousness of the past birth is the occasion for the arising of the new consciousness in the subsequent birth. However, nothing unchangeable or permanent is transmitted from the past to the present. According to Buddhism, material qualities are produced in four ways. Number one, karma, that is past moral and immoral action. Number two, uttu, that is physical change or the tejo, heat element which includes both heat and cold. Number three, chitta, that is mind and mental properties. And number four, ahara, that is nutriment that exist in food, nutrition that exist in food. See page 424. Compare the sex of the individual is determined at conception by the chromosomes makeup of the gametes. And thou this the embryo is endowed with the potentially of developing towards one sex. Frank Alexander, psychosomatic medicine expert, wrote on page number 219. It could be read for further learnings about the thing. Just as the will rests on the ground only at one point, so strictly speaking, we live only for one thought moment. We are always in the present, and that present is ever slipping into the irrevocable past. Each momentary consciousness of this ever changing life process on passing away transmits its whole energy, all the indelibly recorded impressions on it to its successor. Every phrase consciousness, therefore, consists of the potentialities of its predecessors together with something more. At death, the consciousness perishes, as in truth it perishes every moment only to give birth to another in a rebirth. This renewed consciousness inherits all past experiences, as all impressions are indelibly recorded in the ever changing palimpsest like mind, and all potentialities are transmitted from life to life, irrespective of temporary disintegration. Thus, there may be reminiscences of past birth or present incidents. Whereas if memory depended solely on brain cells, such reminiscences would be impossible. The theory of neurology or neurons will better let you understand about these things in brief. This new being, which is the present manifestation of the stream of karma energy, is not the same as and has no identity with the previous one in its line, the aggregates that make up its composition being different from, having no identity with, those that make up the being of its predecessors, and yet it is not an entirely different being since it has the same stream of karma energy, thou modified per change just by having shown itself in that manifestation, which is now making its presence known and the sense perceptible world as the new beings. Death, according to Buddhism, is the cessation of the psychophysical life of any one individual existence. It is the passing away of vitality, ayu, that is psychic and physical life, jivitendriya, heat, usma, and consciousness, vinanna. Bhikshu Silikara is like a noble laureate who was been mentioned, and it could be referred for further reading about the related concepts. That is not the complete annihilation of a being. For thou a particular life span ends, the force which hitherto actuated it is not destroyed. Just as an electric light is the outward visible manifestation of invisible electric energy, so we are the outward manifestation of invisible karmic energy. The bulb may break and the light may be extinguished, but the current remains and light may be reproduced in another bulb. In the same way, the karmic forces remains undistributed by the disintegration of the physical body, and the passing away of the present consciousness leads to the rising of a fresh one in another birth. But nothing unchangeable or permanent passes from the present to the future. In the foregoing case, the thought experience before death being a moral one, the resultant rebirth consciousness takes for its material and appropriate sperm and ovum cell of human parents. The rebirth consciousness, Pati Sandhi Vinan, then lapses into the Bhavanga states. The continuity of the flux at death is unbroken in point of time, and there is no breach in the stream of consciousness. Rebirth takes place immediately, irrespective of the place of birth, just as an electromagnetic wave projected into space is immediately reproduced in a receiving radio set. Rebirth of the mental flux is also instantaneous and leaves no room whatever for any intermediate state. Antara Bhava. Pure Buddhism does not support the belief that a spirit of the deceased person takes lodgment in some temporary state until it finds a suitable place for its reincarnation. See a manual of Abhidhamma by Narada Thera, page 273. According to Tibetan works, writes Dr. Evans Wentz, there is an intermediate state where beings remain for 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, or 7 weeks until the 49 days. This view is contrary to the teachings of Buddhism, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. What we can say, phrases and what we can say 42 and 43, 58, 160, 165. So this question of instantaneous rebirth is well expressed in the Milinda Panha, the King Milinda questions. Venerable Nagasena, if somebody dies here and is reborn in the world of Brahma, and another dies here and is reborn in Kashmir, which of them would arrive first? And they would arrive at the same time, O king. In which town were you born, O king? In a village called Kalasi, Venerable sir. How far is Kalasi from here, O king? About 200 miles, Venerable sir. And how far is Kashmir from here, O king? About 12 miles, Venerable sir. Now think of the village of Kalasi, O king. I have done, sir, Venerable sir. And now think of Kashmir, O king. It is done, Venerable sir. Which of these two, O king, did you think the more slowly and which is the more quickly? Both equally quickly, Venerable sir. It's about speed of mind. And its reference is also given when Yaksha questions Yudhishthir in Mahabharata. Just so, O king, he who dies here and is reborn in the world of Brahma is not reborn later than he who dies here and is reborn in Kashmir. Give me one more simile, Venerable Sir. What do you think, O King? Suppose two birds were flying in the air and they should settle at the same time, one upon a high and the other upon a low tree. Which bird's shed would first fall upon the earth, and which bird's latter? Both shadows would appear at the same time, not one of them earlier and the other later. It's about the speed of light. You can imagine, you can witness the same phenomenon as you will demonstrate as per your own piloting about the objects, and it's related images on Earth. The question might arise: are the sperm and ovum cells always ready, waiting to take up the rebirth through thoughts? According to Buddhism, living beings are infinite in number, and so are world system. And nor is the impregnated ovum that only route to rebirth. Earth, an almost insignificant speck in the universe, is not the only habitable plane, and humans are not the only living beings. As such, it is not impossible to believe that there will always be an appropriate place to receive the last thought vibrations. A point is always ready to receive the falling stone. In this manner, this chapter concludes. The references are as Melinda's question, part 1, pages 127 128. There are about 10 like planetary system in the Milky Way in which life may exist. See Fred Hoyle, The Nature of the Universe, pages 87 to 89, and it tells about the vastness of the universe. Let us carry on for another chapter, and this chapter 29 refers about what is it that is reborn? No soul. Neither the same nor yet another. Vishuddhimagga. Apart from mind and matter, which constitute this so called being, but this does not assert the existence of an immortal soul or an eternal ego, which man has obtained in a mysterious way from an equally mysterious sources. A soul which is eternal must necessarily remains always the same without any change whatever. If the soul which is supposed to be the essence of man is eternal, there could be neither a rise nor a fall. Nor could one explain why different souls are so variously constituted at the outset. To justify the existence of endless felicity in an eternal heaven and unending torment in an eternal hell, it is absolutely necessary to postulate an immortal soul. It should be said, writes Bertrand Russell, that the old distinction between soul and body has evaporated quite as much because matter has lost its solidity as because mind has lost its spirituality. Psychology is just beginning to be scientific, and the present state of psychology, belief in immortality, can at any rate claim no support from science. Religion and Science, page 132. According to the learned author of the Riddle of the Universes, this theological proof that a personal creator has brethren, an immortal soul generally regarded as a portion of the divine soul into man, is a pure myth. The cosmological proof that the moral order of the world demands the eternal duration of the human soul is a baseless dogma. The teleological proof that the higher destiny of man involves the perfecting of his defective earthly soul beyond the groove rests on a false anthropism. Religion and Science, page 126, could be referred for further reading. The moral proof and that the defects and the unsatisfied desires of earthly coexistence must be fulfilled by comprehensive justice on the other side of eternity is nothing more than a pious wish. The ethnological proof that the belief in immortality, like the belief in God, is an innate truth common to all humanity, is an error in fact. The ontological proof that the soul, being a simple, immaterial, and indivisible entity, cannot be involved in the corruption of death, is based on an entirely erroneous view of the psychic phenomena. It is a spiritualistic fallacy. All these and similar proofs of athanatism are in a parlous conditions. They are definitely annulled by the scientific criticism of the last few decades. If nothing in the form of a spirit or a soul passes from this life to the other, what it is that is reborn? In this question, it is taken for granted that there is something to be reborn. A few centuries ago, it was argued cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. True, but first it has to be proved that there is an I to think. We say that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, although we know that actually it is not so. We have to admit that one cannot strike an identical place twice, although to all appearances one has done so. Everything changes so soon, for no two moments are we identically the same. Buddhists agree with Bertrand Russell when he says, actually, Bertrand Russell agrees with Buddhism and he refers to the Buddhist thoughts in his writings, which is referred here. There is obviously some region in which I am the same person as I was yesterday. And to take an even more obvious example, if I simultaneously see a man and hear him speaking, there is some sense in which the I that sees is the same as the I that hears. Until recently, scientists believed in an indivisible and indestructible atom. For sufficient reasons, physicists have reduced this atom to a series of events. For equally good reasons, psychologists find that mind has not the identity of single continuing things, but it is a series of occurrences bound together by certain innate relations. The question of immortality, therefore, has become the question whether these intimate relations exist between occurrences connected with the living body and other occurrences which take place after that body's death. As C.E.M. George says in The Meaning of Life, matter has since disintegrated under our very eyes. It is no longer solid. It is no longer enduring. It is no longer determined by compulsive laws. And more important than all, it is no longer known. The so called atoms, it seems, are both divisible and destructible. The electrons and protons that compose atoms can meet and annihilate one another, while their persistence, such as it is rather that of a wave lacking fixed boundaries and in process of continual change both as regards shape and position than that of a thing. Bishop Berkeley, who showed that this so called atom was a metaphysical fiction, held that there existed a spiritual substance called a soul. Hume, in his Search After a Soul, declares, there are some philosophers who imagine we are every moment intimately conscious of what we call ourselves, that we feel its existence and its continuance in existence and are certain beyond the evidence of a demonstration both of its perfect identity and simplicity. Religion and Science is referred. It's a book, and page number 132, 166 was referred as footnotes, which could give further elaborations about the related concepts as mentioned here. For my part, when I enter most intimately into what I call myself, I always stumble on some particular perception or other of hate or cold, light or shade, love or hatred, pain or pleasure. I never can catch myself at any time without the perception, and never can observe anything but the perception. Bergson says, all consciousness is time existence, and a conscious state is not a state that endures without changing. It is a change without ceasing. When change ceases, it ceases. It is itself nothing but change. Watson, a distinguished psychologist, states, no one has ever touched a soul, or has seen one in a test tube, or has in any way come into relationship with it as he has with the other objects of his daily experience. And nevertheless, to doubt its existence is to become a heretic, and once might possibly even had led to the loss of one's head. Even today, a man holding a public position dare not question it. Dealing with this question of soul, Professor James writes, the soul theory is a complete superfluity so far as according for the actually verified facts of conscious experience goes. So far no one can be compelled to subscribe to it for definite scientific reasons. This may is an empirical aggregate of things objectively known. The I which knows them cannot itself be an aggregate, neither for psychological purpose need it be considered to be an unchanging metaphysical entity like the soul, or a principle like the pure ego viewed as out of time. It is a thought, at each moment different from that of the last moment, but appropriative of the latter together with all that the latter calls its own. The references of William James, Principle of Psychology, page 351, and Watson, Behaviorism, page 4, would be referred to understand the Buddha's psychic powers as interpreted by this psychologist. As the experimental facts find their place in this description, unencumbered with any hypothesis save that of the existence of passing thoughts or states of mind. He concludes his interesting chapter on the soul with the words, and in this book, the provisional solutions which we have reached must be the final word. The thoughts themselves are the thinkers. I repeat, the thoughts themselves are the thinkers. And this is an echo of the very words of the Buddha from 2500 years ago in the valley of the Gangas. Buddhism, teaching a psychology without psyche, resolves the living beings into the mind and matter, nama rupa, which are in a state of constant flux. In the ancient days, the Indian sages too believed in an indivisible atom which they call Paramanu, means atom. According to the ancient beliefs, 36 Paramanus constitute one Anu, 36 Anus, one Tajari, 36 Tajaris, one Ratna Renu, The minute particles of dust seen dancing in the sunbeam are called Ratnarenus. One Parmanu is therefore 1 is to 46,656 part of Ratnanu. With his supernormal vision, the Buddha analyzed the Parmanu and declared that the Parmanu consists of interrelated forces known as Paramathas or essentials of matter. These Paramathas are Patthavi, Appo, Tejo, and Vayo. Patthavi means the element of extension, the substratum of matter. Without it, objects cannot occupy space. The qualities of hardness and softness, which are relative, are two conditions of the same element. Appo is the element of cohesion. Unlike Pattavi, it is intangible. Principle of Psychology, page 215. It is this element which makes the scattered atoms of matter cohere and gives us the idea of body. When solid bodies are melted, this element becomes more prominent in the resulting fluids. This element is found even in minute particles when solid bodies are reduced to powder. The element of extension and cohesion are so closely interrelated that when cohesion ceases, extension disappears. Teju is the element of heat. Cold is also a form of Teju. Both heat and cold are included in Teju because they possess the power of maturing bodies, or in other words, it is the vitalizing energy. Preservation and decay are due to this element. Unlike the other three essentials of matter, this element, also called Uttu, has the power to regenerate by itself. Vayu is the element of motion. The moments are caused by this element. Motion is regarded as the force or the generator of it. Motion and heat in the material realm correspond respectively to consciousness and karma in the mental state. These four are the fundamental units of matter and are invariably combined with the four derivatives, namely color, vanna, odor, gandha, taste, rasa, and nutritive essence, oja. The four elements and the derivatives are inseparable and interrelated, but one element may preponderate over another, as for instance, the element of extension preponderates in earth, cohesion in water, heat in fire, and motion in air. Thus, matter consists of forces and qualities which are in a state of constant flux. According to Buddhism, matter endures only for 17 thought moments. It pleases the commentators to say that the time duration or one thought moment is even less than the 1 millionth part of the time occupied by a flash of lightning. Mind, the more important part in the complex machinery of man, consists of 52 mental states. Feeling or sensation, Vedana is one, perception, sanna is another. The remaining 50 are collectively called volitional activities, samkhara, a rendering which does not exactly convey the meaning of the Pali term of them. Volition or chetana is the most important factor. All these psychic states arise in a consciousness, vinanna. According to Buddhist philosophy, there is no moment when one does not experience a particular kind of consciousness, hanging on to some object, whether physical or mental. The time limit of such a consciousness is termed one thought moment. Each thought moment is followed by another. Thus, the succession of mental states contains a time element. The rapidity of this succession of such thought moments is hardly conceivable. Each unit of consciousness consists of three instants khanna. They are arising or genesis, upada, static or development, thitti, and cessation or dissolution, bhanga. Immediately after the cessation stage of a thought movement, there occurs the genesis stage of the subsequent thought movement. Each momentary consciousness of this ever changing life process on passing away transmits its whole energy, all the indelibly recorded impressions to its successor. Every fresh consciousness consists of the potentialities of its predecessors thrown together with something more. There is therefore a continuous flow of consciousness like a stream without any interruption. The subsequent thought moment is neither absolutely the same as its predecessor since its composition is not identical nor entirely different, being the same stream of life. There is no identical being, but there is an identity in process. It must not be understood that consciousness is in bits joined together like a train or a chain. On the contrary, it constantly flows on like a river, receiving from the tributary streams of sense constant accelerations to its flood, and even dispensing to the world around it the thought stuff it has gathered by the way. It has birth for its source and death for its mouth. Here occurs a juxtaposition of fleeting states of consciousness, but not a superposition of such states as some appear to believe. No state once gone ever recurs, none absolutely identical with what goes before. These states constantly change, not remaining the same for two consecutive moments. Worldlings enmeshed in the web of illusion mistake this apparent continuity to be something eternal and go to the extent of introducing an unchanging soul, the supposed doer and observer of all action, into this ever changing consciousness. The four kinds of psychic phenomena combined with the physical phenomena form the five aggregates Panchaka Khanda, the complex compound termed a living being. One's individuality is the combination of these five aggregates. We see a vast expanse of water in the sea, but the water of the ocean consists of countless drops. An infinite number of particles of sand constitutes the sea beach, but it appears as one long sheet. Waves arise and dash against the shore, but strictly speaking, no single wave comes from the deep blue sea to lose its identity on the shore. In the cinematograph, we see a moving scene, but to represent that motion, a series of momentary pictures must appear on the scene. One cannot say that the perfume of a flower depends on the petal or on the pistil or on the color, for the perfume is in the flower. See Compendium of Philosophy, Introduction, page 12. In the same way, one's individuality is the combination of all the five aggregates. The whole process of these psychophysical phenomena, which are constantly becoming and passing away, is at times called in conventional term the self or atta by the Buddha. But it is a process and not an identity that is thus termed. Buddhism does not totally deny the existence of a personality in an empirical sense. It denies, in an ultimate sense, Paramatha Satchanna, an identical being or a permanent entity, but it does not deny a continuity in process. The Buddhist philosophical term for an individual is santati, that is a flux or continuity, this uninterrupted flux or continuity of psychophysical phenomena conditioned by karma, having no perceptible sources in the beginningless past nor any end to its continuation in the future, except by the Noble Eightfold Path, is the Buddhist substitute for the permanent ego or eternal soul in other religious systems. How is rebirth possible without a soul to be reborn? Birth, according to Buddhism, is the arising of the khandas, the aggregates or groups, khandanam pattu bhava. Just as the arising of a physical state is conditioned by a preceding state as its cause, so the appearance of this psychophysical phenomena is conditioned by causes anterior to its birth. The present process of becoming is the result of the craving for becoming in the previous birth, and the present instinctive craving conditions life in a future birth. As the process of one life span is possible without permanent entity passing from one thought moment to another, so a series of life processes is possible without anything to transmigrate from one existence to another. The Buddhist doctrine of rebirth should be differentiated from the theory of reincarnation, which implies the transmigration of a soul and its inverse, invariable material rebirth. In the Milinda Panha and Vishuddhimagga, the Venerable Nagasena and Buddha Ghosha have employed several similes to illustrate the truth that nothing transmigrates from one life to another. The simile of the flame is very striking. Life is compared to a flame. Rebirth is the transmitting to of its flame from one group to another. The flame of life is continuous altogether, although there is an apparent break at so called death. King Milinda questions Venerable Nagasena: does rebirth take place without anything transmigrating? Yes, O king, rebirth takes place without anything transmigrating. Give me an illustration, Venerable sir. Suppose, O king, a man were to light a light from light brick. Would the one light have passed over to the other light? Nay, indeed, Venerable sir. In exactly the same way, O king, does rebirth take place without anything transmigrating? Give me another illustration. Do you remember, O king, having learned when you were a boy some verse or other from your teacher of poetry? Yes, Venerable sir. Pray, O king, did the verse pass over to you from your teacher? Nay, indeed, Venerable sir. In exactly the same way, O king, does rebirth take place without anything transmigrating. Again, King Milinda questions Venerable Nagasena, what is it that is born into the next existence? O king, it is mind and body that is born into the next existence. It is the same mind and body that is born into the next existence. O king, it is not the same mind, any body that is born into the next existence. But with this mind and body, O king, one does a deed. It may be good or it may be evil. And by reason of this deed, another mind and body is born into the next existence. Venerable sir, if it is not this mind and body that is born into the next existence, is one not freed from one's evil deeds? If one were not born into another existence, one would be freed from one's evil deeds. But, O king, and as much as one is born into an other existence, therefore is one not freed from one's evil deeds. Give me an illustration. O king, it is as if a man were to take away another man's mangoes, and the owner of the mangoes were to seize him and shown him to the king and say, "Sir, this man hath taken away my mangoes." And the other were to say, "Sir, I did not take away his mangoes. The mangoes which this man planted were different from those which I took away. I am not liable to punishment. Pray, O king, would be the man be liable to punishment?" "Assuredly, venerable sir, he would be liable to punishment." "For what reason?" "Because, in spite of what he might say, he would be liable to punishment for the reason that the last mangoes were derived from the first mangoes. In exactly the same way, O king, with this mind, anybody one does a deed. It may be good or it may be bad. Any by reason of this deed, another mind and body is born into the next existence. Therefore is one not freed from one's evil deeds. See Warren Buddhism in translation, page 234 to 35. The Venerable Buddhaghosa elucidates this intricate point by citing the similes of echo, light impression of seal, and reflection in a mirror. A modern writer illustrates this process by a series of billiards balls in a close contact. If, for instance, another ball is rolled against the last stationary ball, the moving ball will stop dead, and the foremost stationary ball will move on. The first moving ball does not pass over, it remains behind, it dies, but it is undeniably the moment of that ball, its momentum, its karma, and not any newly created moment which is reborn in the foremost ball. In like manner, to use conventional terms, the body dies and its karmic force is reborn in another without anything transmigrating from this life to the other. The last thought moment of this life perishes, conditioning another thought moment in a subsequent life. The new being is neither absolutely the same since it has changed nor totally different, being the same stream of karma energy. There is merely a continuity of a particular life flux, just that and nothing more. It continues, and Dr. Ananda Komara Swami Buddha and the Gospel of Buddhism wrote, and it was described on page number 6, which could be referred. But we will think about the moral responsibility as it will continue, and I will read this chapter onwards. Chapter 30 will deal about moral responsibility. By self is one defiled, by self is one purified, as stated by Dhammapada. Karmanyavadhikaraske mafalesu kadachana, as stated by Lord Krishna and Gita, which could be referred for further reading. So let us think, review, and learn the basic concepts of eternity of the soul and its relationship with incarnation. And wishfully, we will be celebrating the auspicious occasion of the birth ceremony of the Lord Krishna today, and their readings. And the readings of Lord Buddha is being followed by millions of people across the globe, and it transcends the limits of time also. So happy Krishnastami to all of you, and we will read further. Thank you.